Jack had spent most of his life alone, living on a quiet, isolated ranch in the wilds of the West. He was used to the sound of the wind howling through the empty plains and the lonely creak of the old wooden house. Most days, Jack worked hard, tending to his cattle, repairing fences, and fixing whatever broke down in his small, modest house. The only company he had were the occasional travelers passing through, and even they were rare. Jack had never been one to seek out companionship. His past had been filled with loss, friends he'd never see again, and a woman he once loved who had married another man. These losses had shaped him into someone who kept to himself, content with the quiet routine of ranch life. He spent his evenings alone by the fire, reading old journals or staring into the flames, thinking of things long past. His ranch had become more of a home to him than anything else, and he couldn't imagine sharing it with anyone. But everything changed one evening when Jack heard strange noises outside his house. At first he dismissed it. The wind could be fierce in these parts, and animals sometimes wandered close to the house. But then he heard it again, footsteps soft and deliberate crunching the dirt outside the window. Jack grabbed his rifle from the wall and slowly crept toward the window, peering through the thin curtain. What he saw made his heart race. Two figures were moving in the shadows, their forms barely visible in the fading light of dusk. Jack hesitated for a moment, wondering if he was imagining things. But no, there they were, two women dressed in clothes that looked unfamiliar. Their faces were hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats, and they moved with a quiet confidence that made Jack uneasy. Without thinking, Jack rushed to the door, opening it just enough to step outside. The two women didn't seem startled by his sudden appearance. They stopped in their tracks and looked at him, their eyes shining with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. "We are your wives," one of them said, her voice firm yet gentle. Jack blinked, unable to comprehend what he had just heard. His mind raced, trying to make sense of their words. Wives, what did they mean by that? He had never seen these women before in his life, and the idea that they had come all the way out here, to his isolated ranch, claiming to be his wives, seemed absurd. "What are you talking about?" Jack asked, his voice rough with confusion. The two women exchanged a brief glance before the other one spoke, her tone almost apologetic. "We have come to fulfill a promise made long ago. Our people, your people, made an agreement many years ago. You are the one chosen to be our husband. It's a tradition." Jack felt his stomach churn. He didn't understand what they were saying. He didn't know what kind of agreement they were referring to. He was just a cowboy, alone in the world with no ties to anyone. But these women, these strangers, were standing in front of him, insisting that they were his wives. "This doesn't make sense," Jack muttered, stepping back toward the door. "I don't know you. I've never seen you before." The women didn't move. They stood there, waiting patiently, as if they had all the time in the world. The one who had spoken earlier, the one named Isabella, stepped forward slightly. "You don't remember?" she asked, her voice softening. "It's all right. The memories are old, but this bond, it goes back a long way. We were promised to you." Jack could feel a tightness in his chest. He didn't know what to think. He had heard stories of old promises, of marriages arranged long before a person was born. But he never believed them to be true. How could this be? How could two women, two complete strangers, show up at his doorstep, claiming to be bound to him by some ancient promise? "Why now?" Jack asked, his mind still spinning. "Why after all these years? Why come to me?" Isabella looked at him, her expression soft but serious. "Our tribe has always respected the bond we made with your ancestors. But it is time for us to fulfill it. It is our tradition, and we are here to honor it." Jack didn't know what to say. The idea of two women, strangers to him, coming to live with him on his lonely ranch was overwhelming. He wasn't sure if he wanted this. He wasn't sure if he even believed in it. But there was something in their eyes, something that told him they weren't lying. This wasn't some joke, some trick. They were serious. "I can't just accept this," Jack said, his voice strained. "I've lived my whole life alone. I didn't ask for this." Tala, the other woman, stepped forward now, her eyes meeting Jack's with a steady gaze. "We don't ask you to change everything in one night," she said softly. "We only ask you to let us stay for a little while. To understand. The rest will come." Jack felt a tug in his chest. He had lived alone for so long. The thought of having someone in his life again, let alone two women, felt both terrifying and intriguing. But he wasn't ready to dismiss them. Not just yet. There was something about their calm demeanor, their sincerity, that made him pause. After a long silence, Jack sighed and reluctantly nodded. "All right," he said. "You can stay for the night, but I need time to think." Isabella and Tala exchanged a quick glance before nodding in agreement. They had waited a long time for this moment, and they weren't going to rush it. They followed Jack into the house, their steps quiet on the wooden floors. Jack closed the door behind them and leaned against it, his mind racing. What had just happened? Was he really going to entertain the idea that these two women were his wives, sent here to fulfill some ancient promise? Jack didn't know the answer. All he knew was that his life had just taken a turn he hadn't expected. As the night wore on, Jack offered the women food and a place to sleep. He watched them as they settled into the modest home, noticing how they carried themselves with an air of grace and confidence. Despite their strange and unexpected arrival, there was a sense of calm in the air, something Jack hadn't felt in a long time. As he sat by the fire that night, Jack couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. Would he accept the truth of what they were saying? Would he embrace this strange new chapter in his life? The answers were still unclear, but for the first time in many years, Jack felt a sense of possibility stirring inside him. The night passed slowly, and Jack lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Tomorrow would be a new day, and with it a new beginning. But for now, all he could do was wait, just as these two women had waited for him. The next morning, Jack woke early, as was his custom. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft glow over the plains outside his ranch. For a moment, he stood at the window, staring out at the vast landscape that had been his world for so long. He had always found peace in the solitude of the land, in the quiet rhythm of ranch life, but now everything felt different. Isabella and Tala were still in the house, still sleeping, and Jack couldn't help but wonder what the day ahead would hold. The night before had been strange, almost surreal. The two Apache girls, his wives as they claimed, had stayed in separate rooms, and Jack had spent hours tossing and turning, his mind racing with questions. Who were they really? What did they mean by the promise they spoke of? Was this some kind of elaborate scheme? Or was there something more to this strange encounter? Something Jack couldn't yet understand. As Jack made his way downstairs, he noticed that Isabella and Tala were already awake, sitting at the small wooden table eating quietly. They had prepared breakfast, a simple meal of bread, dried meat, and wild berries. The smell of the food filled the air, and for a moment Jack's hunger took over, distracting him from his thoughts. Isabella looked up as Jack entered the room. Her gaze was calm, but there was something in her eyes that made Jack feel as though she could see right through him. Tala, sitting across from her, smiled faintly but said nothing. They didn't need to say much. They were still giving Jack the space he needed to process everything. "Good morning," Isabella said softly, her voice gentle, as if trying to reassure him that nothing had to be decided today. "We'll take care of the chores. We'll help you with whatever you need." Jack nodded, unsure of how to respond. He didn't know what kind of help they meant. What kind of life were they offering him? What kind of relationship did they expect? "I'm not sure about all this," Jack finally said, his voice gruff with uncertainty. "I don't know what to believe. What I do know is that I've lived my life alone. I've gotten used to it." Tala's smile faded slightly, but her eyes remained steady. "We don't want to change your life overnight," she said softly. "We just want to understand each other. We've come because it's time. Time for the promise to be fulfilled." Jack sat down at the table, the weight of her words settling over him. There was something so serious about their claim. Something that felt real. He couldn't quite explain it, but he could sense the depth of their belief, and it made him uneasy and curious at the same time. "All right," Jack said after a long pause, his voice low. "I'll let you help, but I need some time. This isn't something I can just accept like that." He snapped his fingers to emphasize the point. "We understand," Isabella replied, her voice calm. "Take your time. We're here for you." The morning passed slowly, each minute stretching longer than the last. Jack showed the women around the ranch, explaining what needed to be done. Repairing a section of the fence, checking the cattle, and fixing the roof of the barn. Isabella and Tala followed Jack around, offering to help with the tasks he'd done alone for years. Though he was hesitant, Jack couldn't deny that there was something comforting about having them around. Their presence wasn't intrusive. It was quiet and steady, as if they belonged there in some way he couldn't quite understand. As the day went on, Jack found himself talking to them more than he had expected. They shared stories of their tribe, tales of life in the Apache community, their traditions, and the deep connection they felt to the land. They spoke with a wisdom that was both foreign and familiar to Jack. He had always thought of Native American culture as something distant, something that didn't touch his life. But now as he listened to Isabella and Tala, he felt a strange sense of connection to it. It was as if the stories they told had been waiting for him all along. By midday, Jack had reluctantly accepted that he was beginning to enjoy their company. They had a way of making the chores feel less like work and more like a shared experience. There was laughter, too, a lightness in the air that Jack hadn't realized he'd missed. Isabella and Tala were strong, capable, and full of life, and their presence was slowly starting to feel like a part of the natural rhythm of the ranch. But as the sun began to set, Jack's doubts crept back in. He had come to like them. He could see how skilled they were with the animals, how at ease they seemed in this life. But he still didn't understand why they had come, why they had chosen him. The promise, the tradition, it all seemed so far-fetched. He wondered if there was something more to it, something he wasn't seeing. That evening, as they sat around the fire, Jack finally asked the question that had been nagging him all day. "Why me?" he asked, his voice low but steady. "Why did your people choose me? Why this promise? What's the connection between my family and yours?" Isabella and Tala exchanged a glance, their expressions serious. Isabella spoke first, her voice soft but clear. "It wasn't just a promise made by your ancestors," she said. "It was a bond, a way to ensure peace and unity between our people. The settlers and the Apache, they both wanted something, and in time our families became linked. The promise was made to keep that bond strong. We were chosen because it's our turn to uphold it." Jack sat back, processing her words. He had heard of agreements made between settlers and Native American tribes, but this felt different. It was a personal bond, something that connected his very bloodline to theirs. "So you've been waiting for this?" Jack asked, still trying to make sense of it. "Yes," Tala replied quietly. "Our ancestors guided us here. We came because it is time for the promise to be fulfilled, not just for us, but for the future, for the families we will build together." Jack didn't know what to say to that. He had spent so many years in solitude, so many years with no one to answer to, that the idea of sharing his life with someone else felt overwhelming. Yet in the quiet moments he shared with Isabella and Tala, he couldn't ignore the strange pull he felt toward them. The night was calm, and for the first time in a long while, Jack didn't feel so alone. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the two women sat beside him, their presence no longer a mystery, but something he was starting to accept. It wasn't clear what the future held, but one thing was certain. This unexpected journey had just begun. As Jack leaned back in his chair, looking at the stars above, he realized that maybe, just maybe, this strange twist of fate was exactly what he needed, and though he couldn't yet understand it fully, he was ready to see where it would take him.